They thought it was routine. A construction worker with a swollen wrist. The doctor frowned, said something wasn't right. Possible nerve damage, delayed inflammation. More scans, observation overnight. So he stayed, quiet, still, his German shepherd lying perfectly alert at his feet. No one noticed how the man memorized exits, or how the dog never relaxed. Then the doors opened. Rain spilled in. A grieving son stepped inside, rage hidden under his coat, a gun in his hand. Fear took the room. Blame turned deadly, and they made one fatal mistake. They didn't know the patient was a former U.S. Marine, and the dog beside him was trained to stop violence. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, please subscribe. Rain slid down the glass doors of St. Anne Regional Hospital, turning the parking lot into a field of broken reflections under yellow sodium lights. Jack Turner stepped inside with the quiet caution of a man who'd never truly entered a room all at once. He was 41, broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that came from years of lifting steel and earlier years of carrying far heavier burdens. His dark brown hair was cut short and uneven, as if trimmed by habit rather than care. A trimmed beard lined his angular jaw, already streaked with gray despite his age. His face carried the permanent set of someone who had learned long ago not to waste expressions. The right sleeve of his jacket was rolled up, revealing a thick white bandage around his wrist, already faintly pink at the edges where blood had seeped through earlier in the day. At his side walked Rex. Rex was a 7-year-old German shepherd, sable-colored, his black and tan coat clean despite the rain outside. His ears stood erect, symmetrical, alert, and his amber eyes missed nothing. A brown service harness rested across his shoulders, the word "service dog" stitched plainly on the side, though anyone who looked closely could tell he was more than that. Rex moved with controlled precision, matching Jack's pace without a leash tug or wandering glance. He was calm, disciplined, and deeply bonded to the man beside him, the kind of dog that seemed to think before acting. Jack flexed his fingers once as the automatic doors closed behind them. Pain sparked up his arm, sharp and unwelcome. The injury had happened 4 days earlier at the construction site, when a steel beam shifted unexpectedly. The company medic had wrapped it, called it a bad sprain, and sent him home. But the pain hadn't faded. It had crept, burrowed, grown teeth. That morning, his fingers had gone numb for a full minute while he tried to tie his boots. Jack didn't scare easily, but he respected warning signs. The emergency department at night had its own personality. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright for the hour. A tired security guard leaned against the wall near the entrance, a heavy-set man in his late 50s with thinning hair and a uniform that looked more ceremonial than practical. He nodded at Jack without much interest, eyes flicking briefly to Rex's harness before drifting away again. Behind the reception desk sat Sarah Whitman, the night intake nurse. She was in her early 30s, tall and slim, with pale skin and strawberry blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail that had begun to fray around her temples. Faint freckles dotted her nose, and dark circles rested under her green eyes, signs of long shifts and short sleep. Despite her exhaustion, her voice was gentle, practiced. "What brings you in tonight?" she asked, typing as she spoke. "Wrist," Jack replied, lifting his bandaged arm. His voice was low, even. "Injury from work. Pain's getting worse." Sarah leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly as she examined the swelling. "Any numbness? Tingling?" "Yes, ma'am." That earned him a longer look. She noticed the way he stood, weight balanced, shoulders squared but not aggressive. She noticed Rex sitting perfectly at heel, unmoving. "We'll get you checked in," she said. "You might be here a bit." "Night's busy." Jack nodded. Waiting was something he understood. They were directed to a row of plastic chairs along a glass-walled corridor. Through the windows, Jack could see the rain sweeping sideways, illuminated by passing headlights. He sat, Rex lowering himself beside him with a soft exhale, his body angled protectively but not tense. Jack rested his injured arm on his thigh, jaw tightening as the ache pulsed again. A young doctor passed by, white coat wrinkled, stethoscope hanging loose. His name badge read, Dr. Alan Moore. He was in his late 40s, tall but slightly stooped, with sandy hair thinning at the crown and lines etched deep around his mouth. He moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, shoulders hunched as if permanently braced for complaint. Jack clocked him without judgment, just information filed away. Minutes stretched, the waiting area filled with small sounds, coughing, murmured conversations, the distant beep of monitors. Jack's mind did what it always did in enclosed spaces. He mapped exits. The main doors behind him, a secondary hallway to the left, a supply corridor partially hidden behind frosted glass. He noted blind spots, reflective surfaces, places sound would echo. He did it without thinking, the habit as natural as breathing. Rex shifted once, adjusting his position, then stilled again. Jack's left hand rested briefly on the dog's neck, fingers brushing the thick fur. The contact grounded him. Rex's presence was a reminder that some things had survived the years intact. Loyalty. Purpose. Silence that didn't demand explanation. Sarah returned, clipboard in hand. "Doctor wants imaging," she said. "Possible nerve involvement. We'll need X-rays, maybe a CT. I'm afraid we'll have to keep you for observation." "That's fine," Jack said, though inwardly he disliked the idea of being stationary. Being told to wait had once meant something very different. Sarah hesitated, glancing at Rex. "He's registered, right?" "Yes." Jack produced the worn paperwork from his jacket without being asked. She smiled faintly. "He can stay." The security guard at the door yawned, rubbing his eyes. The department felt thin, stretched, like a place running on routine rather than readiness. Jack noticed. Rex noticed too, though the dog gave no sign. Then, without warning, Rex stood. It wasn't abrupt, but it was immediate. His ears angled forward, his body rigid, a low sound vibrating in his chest. Not a bark, not a snarl, but something older and more deliberate. Jack felt it through the floor before he fully registered it. He followed Rex's gaze to the automatic doors. Outside, in the rain, a man stood motionless. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, wearing a dark coat soaked through. His head was slightly bowed, hair plastered to his forehead. One hand was visible at his side, the other remained hidden beneath his jacket, pressed tight against his chest. Rex's eyes never left him. Jack's pulse slowed. Something had just changed. The man who would not leave. The man outside did not rush the doors. He waited. Rain slid off the brim of his hood and soaked the shoulders of his coat, darkening the fabric until it clung to his frame. When the automatic doors finally parted, he stepped inside slowly, as if crossing a line he could never uncross again. His name, though no one knew it yet, was Evan Brooks. Evan was in his early 30s, tall but slightly hunched, his posture bent forward by a weight that had nothing to do with his spine. His face was gaunt, cheeks hollowed as if he hadn't slept or eaten properly in days. A dark, uneven beard shadowed his jaw, giving him a rough, unkempt look, and his brown hair hung wet and stringy across his forehead. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed red, darting with restless intensity. Grief had stripped him of softness. What remained was raw nerve and fury barely held in check. The security guard near the entrance straightened half a second too late. He was named Carl Jensen, a retired factory supervisor who had taken the night job for extra income. Thick around the waist, gray-haired, and slow to move, Carl relied more on habit than training. He glanced at Evan, noted the soaked clothes and hollow stare, and made a quick, careless assumption. Another family member. Another long night. He looked away. Evan walked straight to the intake desk. Sarah Whitman looked up as his shadow fell across her screen. She noticed the smell of rain and cold, the way his hands trembled as he pressed them flat against the counter. "I need to speak to a doctor," Evan said. His voice cracked on the last word. Sarah's instincts stirred. She had learned, over years of night shifts, to read the difference between panic and danger. This felt like both. "What's the patient's name?" she asked calmly. "My mother," Evan replied. "Linda Brooks. She was here 3 days ago." Sarah's fingers paused above the keyboard. She pulled up the record quickly. Her face softened, but only slightly. "I'm sorry," she said. "She was discharged. The doctor who saw her isn't on the floor right now." Evan leaned closer. Sarah caught a glimpse of something dark beneath his coat as it shifted, then lost sight of it again. "I don't care where he is," Evan said. "I need his name." Across the waiting area, Jack watched without appearing to. His injured wrist rested still on his knee, but his attention sharpened. He noted Evan's fixed focus on Sarah, the way his shoulders tightened when she spoke. Tunnel vision. He saw the tremor in Evan's right hand, the way his breathing shortened when he was denied information. Rex had risen into a low, controlled stance beside Jack. Weight shifted forward. His ears angled toward Evan, tail still, body tense but disciplined. He was alert now, not aggressive, waiting. Sarah kept her tone even. "Sir, if you step back, I can—" "No," Evan snapped. His voice rose, echoing slightly in the open space. Heads turned. Conversations fell quiet. "You're not listening." "He sent her home. She came back in an ambulance. She died." His words tumbled out faster now, fueled by memory and rage. "She said her stomach hurt. He said it was nothing." "Gas. That's what he said." Sarah felt the room shift. She raised one hand slightly, a calming gesture she'd practiced countless times. "I understand you're upset. Let me get a nurse manager." Evan laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "Managers, forms, paper, that's all you people know how to do." Jack felt a familiar tightening in his chest. He had seen this before, in different uniforms and different countries. A man pushed past reason, clinging to a single point of blame. Evan wasn't scanning the room anymore. He wasn't assessing threats. His world had narrowed to one idea, one face he hadn't yet seen. Rex shifted again, paws spreading slightly for traction. Jack didn't touch him. He didn't need to. They both understood the weight. Carl, the security guard, finally stepped closer, clearing his throat. "Sir, you need to lower your voice," he said, attempting authority he didn't quite possess. Evan turned slowly. His eyes locked onto Carl with open contempt. "You going to stop me?" he asked. Carl hesitated. That pause lasted less than a second, but it was enough. Evan turned back to the desk, jaw clenched, hand pressing harder against his coat. Sarah swallowed. She glanced past Evan, her eyes briefly meeting Jack's. She didn't know why, only that his calm presence felt solid in a room that had begun to tilt. "I can't give you the doctor's name right now," she said softly. "Please, step back." Something in Evan snapped. His shoulders straightened, and for the first time, his expression cleared. Not with calm, but with decision. He took a step back, then another, creating space. Jack's pulse slowed further. This was the moment before impact. Evan's hand came out from under his coat. The metal glinted under the fluorescent lights as he raised the compact, black shape in his grip. The sound that followed was deafening. The shot tore into the ceiling, spraying dust and fragments of tile across the waiting area. People screamed. Someone dropped to the floor. Alarms began to chirp as systems reacted. Evan held the pistol steady now, eyes wild but focused. "Nobody move," he shouted. "I want the doctor who killed my mother." Rex did not move. Jack did not move. The emergency department fell into lockdown. The word lockdown never needed to be announced. The emergency department seemed to understand it instinctively. Doors slid shut with dull mechanical thuds. Red indicator lights blinked on above exits. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, a siren wailed briefly, then cut off, replaced by a heavy, unnatural quiet, broken only by crying and the sharp buzz of adrenaline in the air. Evan Brooks stood at the center of it all, the pistol steady in his hand now, no longer shaking. The shot he had fired had changed something inside him. Fear had burned away, leaving a brittle clarity that frightened everyone who saw it. His shoulders squared, his spine straightened, and for the first time since he'd entered the building, he looked like a man who had made a decision and intended to follow it through. "She was fine when she walked in here," Evan shouted, his voice raw, tearing at the edges. "She was talking. She was joking. She trusted you people." His eyes swept the room, daring anyone to interrupt. "And you sent her home. You sent her home to die." Sarah Whitman slowly lowered herself to the floor behind the intake desk, following her training. Her knees trembled as they touched the cold tile. From this angle, she looked smaller, more fragile than she had moments before. Her pale skin had gone almost translucent, freckles standing out sharply across her nose. Her ponytail had come loose, strawberry blonde strands clinging to her damp cheeks. She kept her hands visible, palms open, breathing shallow but controlled. Fear pressed hard against her ribs, but professionalism held. Other staff followed suit. Nurses in scrubs slid down the walls. A young intern dropped his clipboard, the sound startlingly loud before it clattered across the floor. Carl Jensen, the security guard, backed away slowly, sweat darkening the collar of his uniform. His hands were raised, empty. He knew, finally, that whatever authority he carried meant nothing against a man with a gun and nothing left to lose. He retreated toward a side corridor and disappeared, choosing survival over duty. Jack watched it all without moving. He sat in his chair, Rex lying at his feet, the dog's body pressed flat against the floor as if molded to it. Rex's head was down, ears relaxed, eyes half-lidded. To anyone else, he looked like a well-trained service animal riding out chaos. Jack knew better. Every muscle in the dog was coiled. Evan paced now, boots scraping against the tile. He talked as he moved, words spilling faster, less controlled. 3 hours, he said. She waited 3 hours in your waiting room. She told me she felt sick. I told her to stay. But she said the doctor said it was nothing. Gas. Can you imagine that? He laughed again, a sound that held no humor. Jack's gaze followed Evan's movement, not directly, but through reflections in the glass corridor wall. He noted the distance, the angles, the way Evan favored his right side when he turned. The man's breathing had evened out, but his eyes were bright, over-focused. Target fixation. Jack had seen it in firefights, in men seconds away from pulling a trigger because it felt like the only way forward. Rex sensed the shift too. His tail twitched once, then stilled. Jack lowered his hand and rested it lightly on the dog's shoulder, fingers pressing just enough to communicate, "Stay." Rex obeyed, without question. Evan's pacing slowed. His eyes landed on Jack, lingered, then narrowed. He tilted his head slightly, studying him in a way that made the hair on Sarah's arms rise even from across the room. "You," Evan said. Jack did not look up immediately. When he did, his expression was neutral, unreadable. His face showed no challenge, no fear, just attention. "You're not like them," Evan continued. He gestured with the gun toward the huddled staff. "You're sitting wrong." Jack said nothing. Evan stepped closer, boots stopping just outside the invisible boundary Jack had drawn in his mind. "Hands," Evan ordered. Jack raised them slowly, palms out, careful not to move his injured wrist too quickly. Pain flared, but he didn't react. Evan's eyes flicked to the thick bandage, then back to Jack's hands. "Calluses," Evan muttered. "Not from typing. Not from charts." His gaze traveled to Jack's shoulders, the straight line of his spine. "You're military." It wasn't a question. Jack met his eyes now. "I work construction," he said calmly. Evan smiled, thin and humorless. "You are military," he corrected. "I know the look. You're waiting. You think you can do something." Rex lifted his head an inch. Evan noticed immediately. The pistol swung a fraction toward the dog. "Don't," Evan snapped. "Don't even think about it." He looked back at Jack, eyes blazing. "You don't get to be a hero tonight, you hear me?" Jack nodded once. Slowly. "I hear you." The acknowledgement seemed to satisfy Evan, at least for the moment. He turned away, breathing hard, and scanned the room again. His eyes stopped on a man crouched near a wall, hands shaking violently. Dr. Alan Moore. From the floor, Dr. Moore looked older than he had earlier. His sandy hair was plastered flat with sweat, and his usually pressed coat was wrinkled and stained. His face, angular and once composed, had collapsed inward, lips trembling, eyes glassy with terror. He had built his career on decisiveness, on confidence, but years earlier, a malpractice investigation, quietly settled, had taught him to avoid confrontation at all costs. Now, that instinct betrayed him. Evan walked toward him. Each step was deliberate. "That's him," Evan said softly, almost reverently. "That's the name on the chart." He raised the gun, the barrel aligning with Dr. Moore's chest. Dr. Moore whimpered, a small, broken sound. "Please," he said. I didn't know. I see so many patients. I followed protocol." Evan's jaw clenched. His finger slid closer to the trigger. Jack felt the room tighten, like a held breath stretched too far. He knew this edge, the point where words failed and seconds became lethal. He kept his hands raised, Rex motionless at his feet, but every part of him leaned forward internally, calculating. Evan's voice dropped, deadly calm. "I'm going to count to 10, he said. "And when I'm done, he dies." He smiled at Jack, a warning and a challenge wrapped together. "Don't be a hero," Evan repeated. The number 1 formed on Evan's lips, and the room braced itself for what came next. "Stop." Jack's voice cut through the room before Evan could speak again. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried the weight of command without sounding like one. Jack took a single step forward, slow enough not to startle, deliberate enough to be noticed. His hands were still raised, palms open, his injured wrist trembling slightly despite his effort to keep it steady. Evan's eyes snapped to him instantly. The gun wavered a fraction. "I told you not to move," Evan said, his voice sharp but no longer booming. "I know," Jack replied. His tone was even, almost conversational. "I'm not here to stop you. I just want to talk." The room seemed to inhale as one. Sarah Whitman watched from the floor behind the desk, her heart pounding so hard it felt visible beneath her scrub top. She was aware of everything at once, the cold tile against her knees, the sting of dried tears on her cheeks, the way Jack's presence had subtly shifted the balance in the room. He didn't look brave. He looked careful. Evan laughed, a short, brittle sound. "Talk?" He gestured with the gun toward Dr. Moore, who had begun to sob openly now, shoulders shaking. His once crisp posture collapsed into a huddle of fear. "You think talking fixes this?" Jack didn't answer immediately. He adjusted his stance instead, angling his body slightly sideways. Not squared off, not submissive, but open. Rex remained flat on the floor behind him, chin resting between his paws, eyes closed just enough to look harmless. Only Jack knew how much control that took. "You lost your mother," Jack said quietly. "I lost people too." Evan stiffened. "Don't," he snapped. "Don't compare that." Jack nodded once. "You're right. It's not the same. But it hurts the same." He paused, letting the words settle. He kept his breathing slow and visible, exaggerating the rise and fall of his chest. Without realizing it, Evan began to mirror the rhythm. Jack continued carefully. "I was 22 when my best friend bled out in the back of a transport truck. We'd trained together, ate together. He had a kid on the way. I remember thinking if I just yelled louder, if I just blamed someone hard enough, maybe he'd come back." Evan's grip tightened on the pistol, then loosened. His jaw worked as if he were chewing something bitter. The room had gone so quiet that the faint hum of the fluorescent lights sounded deafening. Sarah saw the change before she understood it. Evan's shoulders dropped, just slightly. His eyes lost some of their wild shine, replaced by something raw and exposed. Jack took another step, then stopped. He didn't want to crowd Evan. "I'm not asking you to forgive anyone," he said. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking you to breathe for 10 seconds. Evan swallowed. His eyes flicked to the gun in his hand, then back to Jack's face. "She trusted him," Evan said hoarsely. "She trusted them." "I know," Jack replied. "And right now every person in this room is watching you decide what kind of man you're going to be when this ends." Evan's hand trembled again. The barrel of the gun dipped no more than an inch, but it was enough. Enough for hope to flare. Dr. Moore looked up, tears streaking down his face. For a heartbeat, he believed he might live. Rex opened his eyes fully now, though he did not move. His amber gaze was fixed on Evan, unreadable, patient. Jack saw it, the edge, the place where Evan could step back or fall forward. He pressed gently. "You're not a killer," Jack said. "If you were, this would already be over." Evan's breathing hitched. "You don't know that," he whispered. Jack nodded. "I do." The gun lowered another fraction. Sarah felt her lungs burn as she realized she'd been holding a breath. Then, from outside, everything shattered. A siren wailed suddenly, sharp and close. Red and blue light flashed through the glass walls, painting the emergency department in frantic color. The sound bounced off the tile and steel, overwhelming, intrusive. Evan flinched violently. His head snapped toward the windows. "No!" he shouted. "No, no, no!" Panic flooded back into his eyes, drowning the fragile calm that had formed. "I told you not to call them." "I didn't," Jack said quickly. But the words were already lost. Evan staggered backward, gun jerking upward. His breathing spiraled out of control, fast and shallow. The world he had narrowed so carefully cracked open again, flooded with threat. "They're coming for me," Evan screamed. "They're going to make me disappear." The gun went off again. Glass exploded from one of the partition windows near the trauma bay, showering the floor with shards. People screamed. Sarah ducked instinctively, arms over her head. Dr. Moore cried out, curling into himself. Rex's body tensed, muscles bunching, but he did not move without the command. Jack felt the room slide away from him, the fragile bridge he'd built collapsing under the weight of that siren. Evan turned back toward them, face twisted with terror and rage. The gun came up again, higher this time, steadier. Jack knew then that the window for words had closed. The first edge had been crossed. The glass was still settling on the floor when Evan moved. He didn't shout this time. He didn't threaten. He simply crossed the distance in 3 fast strides and grabbed Emily Carter by the arm. Emily was 24, slight and barely 5'4", with dark brown hair pulled into a tight bun that was coming undone at the edges. Her skin was olive-toned, her face narrow and earnest, the kind of face that hadn't yet learned how to hide fear. She had been a nurse for less than a year, still carrying the reflex to help before thinking about herself. When Evan yanked her upright, she gasped, her free hand instinctively reaching for balance rather than defense. Evan hauled her backward, pressing her against his chest. The pistol came up again, the barrel resting just beneath her jaw.
Emily froze, eyes wide, breath shallow and rapid. She smelled antiseptic and gun oil and the sharp, metallic tang of shattered glass. "No more talking," Evan snarled. "Everyone, shut up." The room obeyed instantly. Jack felt something inside him close, like a door bolted from the inside. The space for words had collapsed. Evan's posture had changed, his weight shifted unevenly, his grip tightening not with hesitation, but resolve. This wasn't bargaining anymore. It was containment. Rex responded before Jack consciously processed it. The dog slid forward by inches, changing his angle so his body was partially shielded by the overturned chair. His head stayed low, eyes locked on Evan's hands, tracking the gun with precise intensity. He was positioning himself without command, the quiet intelligence of years of training guiding him to a better line, a better moment. Still, he did not break. He waited. Jack lowered his hands slowly, palms facing inward now, less exposed. His injured wrist throbbed in time with his pulse, heat spreading beneath the bandage. He flexed his fingers once and felt a sharp spike of pain shoot up his arm. Not yet, he told himself. Evan dragged Emily a step farther back. "I told you!" he shouted, voice cracking again. "I told all of you. I don't have anything left." Emily let out a small, involuntary sob. Tears streaked down her cheeks, but she didn't scream. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, doing everything she could not to make it worse. Jack watched her carefully. She was scared, but she was holding. That mattered. "Put her down," Jack said. His voice was firm now, no softness left in it. Evan laughed. "You think you're in charge?" His eyes flicked to Rex for the first time with something like calculation. "You and your dog." Jack felt the shift immediately. Evan's gaze lingered on Rex longer than it should have, tracking the subtle repositioning, the controlled stillness. People who had never seen a trained working dog missed it. Evan didn't. "You think I didn't notice?" Evan continued. "That thing hasn't moved wrong once." Rex's ears twitched. Jack resisted the urge to reach back and touch him. The dog already knew. Jack exhaled slowly and reached for the edge of the bandage around his wrist. He peeled it back a fraction, careful to keep the movement small, almost casual. The skin beneath was swollen and angry, bruised deep purple near the joint. Blood had begun to seep again, warm and slick. He ignored it. Pain was just information. Evan tightened his grip on Emily. "You're bleeding," he said, almost amused. "I know," Jack replied. "Good." Evan's face twisted. "So you're not invincible." Jack finished loosening the bandage, letting it hang. The relief was minimal, but the freedom of movement mattered. He kept his arm close to his body, concealing the worst of it. Emily's eyes flicked toward Jack, then to Rex, then back forward. She swallowed hard. She didn't know what she was hoping for, only that she wasn't alone. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone else," Evan said suddenly, voice rising again. "But you won't listen. None of you ever listen." Jack took a careful step sideways, subtle enough that it looked like nervous movement rather than strategy.
He was narrowing the distance without advancing.
Evan noticed, of course.
"Stay where you are," Evan barked. Jack stopped immediately. "Okay." Rex adjusted again, shifting his weight to his hind legs. He was closer now, closer than Evan realized.
Still no command. Still waiting.
Evan's eyes returned to the dog, narrowing. "That thing," he said. "That's your real weapon, isn't it?" Jack didn't answer. Evan's mouth curled into something ugly. "You think he won't move unless you tell him to?" He pressed the gun tighter under Emily's chin. "Let's see." Emily whimpered softly. Jack felt the last threads of patience snap cleanly. Not anger. Clarity. He knew the shape of what was coming, even if he didn't know the timing. "I don't have anything left," Evan screamed again, louder now, rawer. His voice echoed off the walls. "Nothing." Rex's gaze never left the gun. His breathing was steady, almost silent. Evan shifted his stance, and then he turned the gun. Not at Jack, not at the staff huddled on the floor. At Rex.
The barrel aligned with the dog's chest, deliberate and unmistakable. Jack's heart kicked hard against his ribs. The world narrowed to that single lethal line between metal and fur. Evan smiled, wild-eyed. "Now let's see who moves." Rex did not move. Jack did. The muzzle steadied on Rex's chest, the dark circle swallowing everything else in the room. For a fraction of a second, the hospital seemed to hold its breath. The monitors, the glass fragments, the people frozen to the floor. Evan's finger tightened, tendons standing out white against the black grip. His jaw clenched with a grief that had finally tipped into something irreversible. Jack moved before thought could catch up. He crossed the angle between gun and dog in one explosive step, turning his shoulder into the line of fire while his injured arm swung wide, shoving Rex laterally out of the cone. Pain flared white-hot through Jack's wrist, sharp and tearing, but momentum carried him forward. He didn't shout Evan's name. He didn't plead. He gave one sound, short, clipped, born of muscle memory rather than language. "Now!" Rex launched. The dog was 7 years old, a sable German shepherd with a broad chest and a scar at the base of his left ear, earned long before Jack ever adopted him from a decommissioned canine program. His movement wasn't wild. It was precise, low to the ground, a blur of controlled violence that closed distance in heartbeats. Evan jerked the pistol back toward Jack, reflex overriding intent, and the shot cracked into the ceiling instead of flesh. Plaster rained down. Rex hit Evan's forearm with surgical accuracy, jaws locking just below the wrist. Bone didn't snap, but the grip failed instantly. The pistol clattered across the tile, skidding to a stop under a gurney. Evan screamed, not the roar from before, but a raw animal sound ripped straight from the gut. He staggered, off balance, trying to wrench free. Jack was already moving again, despite the scream tearing out of his own arm. He drove his weight into Evan's center, shoulder to chest, using the dog's pull to fold the man backward. They went down hard. Rex released on command and repositioned in the same motion, teeth flashing again to the shoulder, pinning Evan to the floor without going for the throat. It was over in seconds, though to everyone watching it felt like a lifetime compressed into a single breath. "Hands behind your back," Jack barked, voice hoarse. Evan sobbed, the fight draining out of him as fast as it had ignited. His face was pressed to the tile, rainwater and sweat streaking together, grief shaking his frame in uncontrollable spasms. He tried to move once more, and Rex growled, a low, vibrating warning that needed no translation. Evan went still. The doors burst open. Police flooded the ward in a rush of dark uniforms and raised rifles, boots slipping on glass and spilled saline. At the front was Sergeant Daniel Reyes, mid-40s, compact and broad-shouldered, his hair clipped close to gray at the temples.
His face was lined by years of night shifts and bad calls, eyes sharp but steady. He took in the scene in a blink, the gun on the floor, the dog braced and snarling, Jack on one knee with blood running down his arm. "Weapon down," Reyes ordered, already lowering his rifle as his assessment clicked into place. "Dogs controlled." Jack nodded once and gave Rex the release word. The shepherd backed off immediately, sitting at Jack's side, chest heaving but eyes alert. Officers swarmed Evan, cuffing him with practiced efficiency. He didn't resist. He just wept, shoulders shaking, the anger finally collapsing into something hollow and exhausted. Reyes approached Jack carefully. "You hit?" Jack tried to answer and felt the room tilt. The adrenaline that had carried him through drained out all at once, leaving behind the damage it had been masking. His wrist throbbed, then burned, then went oddly numb. Blood soaked through the loosened bandage, dripping onto the floor in dark, steady drops. Jack started, and then his knees buckled. He went down hard, catching himself with his good hand as a wave of dizziness crashed over him. Someone shouted for a stretcher. Emily's face appeared in front of him, pale but determined, her hands already pressing fresh gauze into the wound with professional calm. Her fingers trembled just slightly. "Stay with me," she said, voice tight. "Jack, look at me." He tried to focus on her eyes and couldn't quite manage it. The ceiling lights smeared into long white lines. Rex whined softly, nudging Jack's shoulder with his nose, staying close without crowding. Jack managed a weak breath and lifted his uninjured hand, resting it against the dog's neck. The familiar warmth grounded him. "I'm here," Jack muttered. "I'm good." Reyes crouched beside them. "You're done," he said firmly. "Let them take care of you." Jack didn't argue. He let himself be eased onto the stretcher, the sounds of the ward returning in fragments, the murmured radio traffic, the clink of handcuffs, the distant wail of sirens outside. As they wheeled him away, he caught one last glimpse of Evan being lifted to his feet, head bowed, the gun sealed in an evidence bag. The threat was gone. The perimeter was held. And only then, with the danger past, did Jack finally let his eyes close. Morning arrived quietly, the way it often does after violence, without announcement, without apology. Pale light seeped through the slatted blinds and rested on the sterile white walls, softening the edges of the room. Jack surfaced slowly from anesthesia, awareness returning in fragments. The steady beep of a monitor, the faint antiseptic smell, the weight of a splint anchoring his right arm. His wrist was wrapped in a rigid brace now, the bandages clean and tight. Beneath them, metal pins held what surgery had repaired. The pain was present but distant, dulled to a manageable throb. When he shifted, something warm pressed against his side. Rex lay on the floor beside the bed, his back against the frame, head lifted, eyes open. The dog rose immediately when Jack stirred, tail giving a single, restrained sweep before he sat again, posture alert, gaze tracking the doorway. He was still working. A woman entered quietly, clipboard tucked to her chest. Sarah Langford moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had spent decades in hospitals. She was in her late 40s, tall and lean, with ash-blonde hair pulled into a low ponytail streaked with gray she didn't bother to hide. Her skin was fair, weathered by long shifts and fluorescent light, her eyes calm and direct. She wore no jewelry except a simple watch. When she spoke, her voice was steady, warm without being indulgent. "You're awake," she said, offering a small smile. "I'm Dr. Langford, orthopedic surgery. We repaired the wrist." "You're lucky. Damage was significant, but we caught it in time." Jack nodded once, absorbing the words. "How long?" "Recovery?" she considered. "Weeks before full strength, longer if you rush it." Her eyes flicked briefly to Rex, then back to Jack. Try not to. She explained the procedure in practical terms, answered his questions without embellishment, then checked the chart and excused herself.
The room settled again. Rex eased back down, but didn't sleep. Later, Emily came in. She looked different in daylight, still slight, still young, but steadier now. Her hair was braided back, her uniform freshly changed. There was a faint bruise on her arm where Evan had gripped her. She stood awkwardly near the door, hands clasped, eyes searching Jack's face as if to confirm he was real. "Hey," she said quietly. Jack shifted, careful of the splint. "You okay?" She nodded, swallowing. Yeah. She stepped closer. "I just wanted to say thank you. If you hadn't been there—" Her voice trailed off, the words refusing to finish themselves. Jack shook his head slightly. "You did what you needed to do." Emily managed a small smile, eyes bright. "Still, thank you." She glanced down at Rex, who met her gaze calmly. "Both of you." When she left, the weight of the night settled more fully. Outside the room, the hospital moved on, carts rolling, phones ringing, life resuming its indifferent rhythm. In the afternoon, Sergeant Reyes stopped by. He looked tired, his uniform rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. He leaned against the counter rather than taking the chair, hands resting on his belt. "They're holding Evan," he said. "Alive. Charges will be heavy." He paused. "There's more." Jack waited. Hospital administration opened a full review. Dr. Moore's been suspended pending investigation. Evan's mother's file, there were errors. Missed indicators, not excuses, but facts. Reyes exhaled. "It doesn't fix anything, but it matters." Jack closed his eyes briefly. He didn't feel relief. Just a quiet acknowledgement that truth, however late, had a way of surfacing. "They want statements," Reyes continued. "Media, too." "No," Jack said immediately. Reyes nodded, unsurprised. "Figured." He straightened. "For what it's worth, you did good work." As evening approached, the light shifted again, warmer now, gold pooling on the floor. A nurse removed Jack's IV. Paperwork followed, signatures he barely looked at. Rex paced once, sensing movement, then settled again. When they finally wheeled Jack toward the exit, the corridors were calmer than the night before. Staff glanced up as he passed, some offering quiet nods. No applause, no speeches. Jack preferred it that way. Outside, dawn had fully claimed the sky. The rain was gone, the air cool and clean. Jack paused just beyond the doors, breathing it in. Rex stepped close, leaning lightly against his leg, solid and present. They walked away together, unremarkable silhouettes against the morning. No cameras. No medals, just two figures moving forward, carrying the weight of a night that had ended without glory. And that was enough. Some people mistake silence for weakness. They forget that restraint is learned, often painfully. There are those who once trained to end violence and who now choose with equal discipline to stop it instead. Sometimes miracles do not arrive with thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly, through a man who chooses restraint instead of rage, through a dog that waits for a command instead of acting on instinct, through a moment where violence could win, but mercy stands its ground. God does not always stop the storm. Sometimes he sends someone into it, someone prepared, someone wounded, someone willing to stand in the line of fire so others may live. In our daily lives, we pass quiet people every day and never know what strength God has placed inside them. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith, courage, and unseen heroes.
May God bless and protect every one of you.